Yo, Michael Saylor just went on Bloomberg and dropped one of the biggest Bitcoin bombshells you're going to have to see to believe. He basically told legacy mainstream media that we're going to hit $1 million, $1 million Bitcoin 100%. And he said that potentially in 2026, there was going to be no bear market at all. You got to see it to believe it. We have the clip lined up. Let's play it, and then we'll talk about it.
How do you expect the asset to continue a price increase at these levels that we've seen? I mean, can it keep that up over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years? And at what point do we see, winter coming again? Because that's been a permanent fixture of this asset class, right? It's gone from 0 or 1,000 to 20, and then back down to 3 or 4, and then up to 50, and then back down to 15, and now up to 110. Like, when does it drop again?
Winter's not coming back. We're past that. We're past that phase. If Bitcoin's not going to 0, it's going to $1 million. And you have all the evidence you need to determine that, right? The President of the United States has determined he supports Bitcoin. The cabinet supports Bitcoin. Scott Bessent supports Bitcoin. Paul Atkins has shown himself to be an enthusiastic believer of Bitcoin and digital assets. Ken Tez at CFTC feels the same way. The banks are going to custody Bitcoin. Bitcoin has gotten through its riskiest period. The accounting has been corrected. There's now only 450 Bitcoin a day available for sale by natural sellers. That's the miners. At this level, that works out to about $50 million of Bitcoin available for sale every day. If that $50 million is bought, then the price has got to move up to find any seller that's price sensitive. Now, if you do the math, you'll actually see the Bitcoin treasury companies by themselves are buying the entire natural supply.
Yeah.
BlackRock and the ETFs are buying another measure of that. And we've got nation state actors coming into the space. So I think when Bitcoin rallies, if it surges to 500,000 or $1 million, then maybe we could talk about it crashing down by $200,000 a coin. But at the current price levels, it only takes $50 million to turn the entire drive shaft of the crypto economy one turn. And you've got the Trump media organization announcing $2.5 billion. You've got GameStop announcing $500 million. You've got my company that's raising billions and billions of dollars. So the writing is on the wall. Bitcoin's moving higher.
All right, everybody, tons to unpack here. By the way, we're joined with Dave Bradley. Dave Bradley is the strongest, best looking, most intelligent Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, joining us on the show. And he's got a hoagie with him. Anyways, guys, let's talk about this crazy, crazy clip that Michael Saylor. I mean, he's bold. I mean, he's vindicated, rightly so. I mean, he paid his dues. He earned his stripes. He bought Bitcoin basically at the top at 20 in 2021. His company was down billions of dollars. And then, of course, this bull market picked up and Michael Saylor was vindicated. And all of a sudden, you're starting to see Bitcoin treasury companies popping up left and right worldwide. We have the announcement of Nakamoto, David Bailey. There's a lot of Davids on today's show. A lot of Davids. David Bailey. And then, of course, you had Jack Mallers and Tether and SoftBank with the 21 treasury company. And then you have all these international Bitcoin treasury companies as well. But there was a lot of things that he said there, which I've been in Bitcoin for almost a decade now, and I've heard this before. And, what am I saying? There's going to be no more bear markets. There's going to be no more winters. This is the super cycle. We've heard this before, right? And then there's the question of paper Bitcoin. Why am I saying paper Bitcoin? Because fundamentally, a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies, we have to take their word for it that they have the Bitcoin that they say they do. And, Michael Saylor is making a good case in terms of the regulatory environment, right? You had the Trump administration who not only is pro Bitcoin, but the family itself owns Bitcoin, right? The vice president owns Bitcoin. A lot of the cabinet members own Bitcoin. The Treasury Secretary owns Bitcoin, positive towards Bitcoin, has said positive things about Bitcoin publicly on legacy media. So all the breakdown by Michael Saylor is completely correct, but I see a lot of hesitation on X, and I've seen this pattern before. Maybe it's different because it's Wall Street, but I don't know. I'm going to ask this Bitcoin OG, David Bradley. You've been here for a very long time in this industry, my friend. What's your take on Michael Saylor's predictions?
Um, well, I mean, Bitcoin's obviously going to 1 million at some point. The idea that there's going to be no bear market, like, nobody can really predict that one way or the other. I have no idea whether there's going to be a bear market. If Saylor or anyone else could predict that, they would do nothing but predict markets, right? And so he's obviously talking his bag, and it makes sense. But I think the whole phenomenon is pretty interesting because it's an example of, like, the broader market and a lot of retail interest in the people that are piling into these stocks, in a roundabout way, are just realizing that dollars are free to create. And so they're like, you mean we can just, like, create these legal structures within the current system and dollars will come in there and then we can get Bitcoin for these worthless dollars? And, you know, it's a smart move. You can get someone else to, someone closer to the money printing spigot than you, to give you some dollars that they acquired very cheaply or for free, and use them to buy the most scarce asset in the world, then it's a no-brainer. So I think the general thesis is right, that you know, all this capital is pouring in. The world's finally starting to see it as a reserve asset. I don't really care whether Trump or any other government people like it. It's the antidote to those people. It's the antidote to that entire system. And ultimately, the Bitcoin is the technology that will lead to the end of the United States government. But I think the winds shifting in general is a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to kind of clarify there, right? Which is Bitcoin in general, right? Peacefully, what it's going to do over a long period of time is it's going to shrink the size of governments, because governments' size and bureaucracy are fueled by their ability to print money, right? And that really is just a form of wealth redistribution. And that just makes governments larger and larger and larger. Obviously, with Bitcoin, an alternative system, the more and more people realize that, hey, wait a second, inflation isn't necessary. Money can exist without inflation. More people choose to opt out of the fiat system, of fiat money. The question, what is money, is asked more and more and more by the populace until we reach a critical mass. And I think that's what Dave was talking about in terms of, you're going to see an eventual decrease in size of governments because their ability to print, to fund themselves, will be greatly diminished as more and more people choose to opt out into a non-sovereign alternative, which is Bitcoin, right? I think that's the case that Dave is trying to make. And by the way, this phenomenon isn't just going to be happening in the United States. I think this is a phenomenon that's going to be happening worldwide. And I think in the process of this phenomenon playing out, I think humanity is going to experience a freedom the which the likes it's never seen before in human history. And that's really, really exciting times. But all of this is going to happen legally, democratically, peacefully. And it's just a matter of game theory and incentives. Like, fundamentally, it comes down to this: Bitcoin is better money than fiat. Bitcoin is better money than dollars. Eventually, the world is going to come to that realization, like it has over the last 16 years. This is why Bitcoin has been the best performing asset the world has ever seen. We all keep hearing the American dream is dead. We keep hearing that narrative over and over and over again. We keep hearing, hey, I can't afford rent. I can't afford groceries. Well, that's because you haven't been saving in Bitcoin. If you've been saving in Bitcoin, everything around you has been getting progressively cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And I just had a great conversation with Jeff Booth about a week ago. So we posted it on our YouTube channel, and he's basically making the case. And Jeff Booth, also a great Canadian, he's basically making the case that, look, the natural state of the free market is deflationary. Money should be deflationary, but it's because governments have got involved. They've manipulated, they've controlled, they've printed money, that they've, like, kind of Frankenstein the free market system. And a lot of people bought into the very idea that, you know, somehow money needs to lose 2% in purchasing power in order for it to function. Bro, one of the comments that I got in the Jeff Booth episode, just to give you guys an idea of how heavily entrenched this is, one of the comments that I got in the Jeff Booth podcast was like, Nico, like, if there isn't any inflation, like, no one will invest and no one will purchase anything, right? Like, and I saw that comment, I'm like, wow, we're still early, right? So, Dave, I don't know if you want to add to that, man. Very exciting comments by Sailor. I feel like he feels emboldened. Strategies performed extremely well. Now, my question to you is, you know, these treasury companies, in a way, they're kind of outperforming Bitcoin. Are they a substitute for people buying spot Bitcoin and putting it into self-custody?
Yeah. So they're definitely not a substitute for that. You're getting, when you buy into one of these treasury companies, you're getting partial exposure to the price of Bitcoin. So that's a really important thing. That's probably the most important thing about buying Bitcoin. But you're missing the other half of the equation, which is the ability to control your own money. And I don't think that the market is really acting rationally when it's pricing these treasury companies. And that's why there's so many of them popping up, is because there are these massive premiums on the Bitcoin that they're holding, and the value of the enterprise that, you know, like the value of MicroStrategy and the actual business unit there is nowhere near what the premium the stock suggests it should be. And so what we've got is a case where the markets are being irrational. And that makes a lot of sense, because the markets are funded by, like I said, by this free spigot of fiat. And when the fiat is free, it makes it very hard for the market to accurately price anything when the dollar is the denominator. And so that's where we're seeing right now is really just the symptom of so much money in the markets flying around, and the fact that the markets don't have their incentive systems aligned at all, so they can't really price anything. And so when you invest in a Bitcoin treasury company, you're not just investing in the Bitcoin. There is the Bitcoin on the balance sheet that you have some claim to, in theory. What you're really investing in, though, especially if you're investing in one of these ones that already has a premium on it, is the variation in how irrational the market will continue to be. So you're betting, is this premium going to go from a 2x of the Bitcoin on the books to a 3x, and in that way outperform the underlying Bitcoin? And so it's a bit of a gamble. There is more money to be made on this. There's even more money to be made on roulette. You know, if you want to gamble, you can make a ton of money just throwing it down on red and spinning the wheel. So it's a gamble compared to actually holding Bitcoin. And I think that the risks that are present in there are not really priced in whatsoever. I don't think there's been enough talk about those in the market. You got, first of all, the fact that all of these Bitcoins are pretty much stored in the same place, right? Like, they're all in the state of New York. They're all sitting there in Coinbase custody and Fidelity custody. And those are in danger in a couple ways. One is that there is a danger of a hack. We would hope that, you know, they've been a big target for a long time. They've probably got their security, both physical and digital, down pretty well, and we haven't seen a hack from them. But you have to acknowledge that that is a possibility that's out there. And then the second possibility is some kind of government intervention, right? Like a 6102 attack from the government. As Nico mentioned, the invention of Bitcoin in the long term permanently removes the government's ability to print money, to spend money. And so one of two things is going to happen. Either the government is going to stop spending as much money as it does and start acting a bit more rationally, which is kind of a hilarious idea. And the other option is that the government is going to run out of spending power at some point. And if they have, you know, these millions of Bitcoin that are sitting in custodians that are regulated by the state of New York, and they have both physical and legal access to those coins, the chances that they will at some point decide to say, hey, we're taking those coins, just another executive order, 6103 or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to replace those coins either with dollars that we, of course, have printed for free, or IOUs denominated in Bitcoin that are backed by the full force of the United States government, which, you know, of course, they have printed those IOUs for free as well. So I wouldn't feel safe with my only exposure to Bitcoin being in those treasury companies, but like, I see why people invest in them, and you know, it is a way to make some quick money, just like roulette.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with. There's something that you buried the lead there. David. And I want to emphasize, I want to double back on that, which is the risk to these hasn't been priced into them. And Dave, we've been through a couple cycles already, and there's always that thing that outperforms Bitcoin during that cycle, right? So 2017 was the ICOs. 2021 was the layer 2 altcoins, Ethereum, whatever, Cardano. And then this cycle, it seems to be the Bitcoin treasury companies, right? So I've seen this pattern before. Now, does that mean that strategy is at risk? I don't think so. Does that mean that 21 is at risk? I don't think so. Does that mean that Nakamoto is at risk? I don't think so. But all the other copycats that are inevitably going to come, and they're going to start cutting corners because they're going to try to, take more risky loans to try to accumulate more Bitcoin to raise the price of their stock. I think eventually there's going to be some type of catalyst, and then there's going to be a domino effect, and then we're going to get that bear market that was never going to come, right? We've seen this play out so many times. It's just there's always this different alpha play that outperforms the price of Bitcoin. But as you were saying, David, stay humble, stack sats, right? Like you can just go and play roulette. Like I played roulette once in Vegas, by the way, and I put $50 on red. My roulette rule is very simple, right? Because I don't like gambling. I like poker though. Poker is pretty cool. I don't think of it as gambling as much, but roulette, it's simple. You put it on one color one time. If you lose, you walk away. If you win, you walk away. That's it, right? So anyways, Opti has a better roulette strategy. But before I pass it on to Opti, my sister is in the room. And I do want to embarrass her. So I'm going to say this live. Megan. Anyways, Opti, what are your thoughts, bro? What are your thoughts on the treasury companies? And what are your thoughts on the Michael Saylor's $1 million Bitcoin prediction? And basically him saying, listen, crypto winner, Bitcoin winner, it's over, it's done. We're in a super cycle.
Well, I do love super cycle memes, so I truly, of course, I love that meme. But first off, Bitcoin treasury companies, I couldn't agree more with what Nico and Dave were saying. It does seem to be the new ICO. It's all the craze right now. And, again, we've been saying for a while, it's probably not going to be MicroStrategy or Nakamoto or even maybe Metaplanet. But it does seem that at some point these Bitcoin treasury strategies will be the reason for a huge collapse. Hopefully it's not as big as an FTX collapse, but this is the craze and the hype that we're seeing right now, which makes me feel like it's coming at some point. And as Dave said, if your only exposure to Bitcoin is through these Bitcoin treasury companies, personally, I would not do that. I do not recommend that. I think you should be holding Bitcoin directly. Obviously, it's the best savings vehicle, period. Yes, you might be able to get some extra fiat gains out of these Bitcoin treasury companies. But I mean, even Saylor has said it himself. He's like, look, if that is too much risk for you and you're a little more risk averse, then obviously just hold Bitcoin in cold storage. So I think even he's saying this, but I don't think it's said enough out there. A lot of people are like, I mean, we were trolling here, Nico. We were even talking about Nico's like, man, I should have just gone all in on MicroStrategy. And we're like, yeah, hindsight's 2020. It's very easy to look back and be like, yeah, that should have been the move. But who knows? It could have played out differently. So I don't think there's a problem with you, playing a little bit in these Bitcoin treasury companies. Obviously, Nakamoto's the latest one by David Bailey. Seems to be doing well. We saw what happened with Metaplanet. We saw what happened with Strategy. They've gone nuclear. And like, Dave was saying, there is a premium on these stocks right now. The market is a bit irrational right now. There's a lot of hype being involved in these stocks. And, hey, there's money to be made if you understand what's going on. Now, on the $1 million prediction, obviously, we think it's going there. Do we know when? No, but it is starting to feel like it's going to happen sooner than we think, especially when you kind of consider all the things that Saylor was saying in that clip. There's just a lot of momentum in our direction, and I think at a certain point, when the price does start running, it's going to be a violent move upwards. I don't think it's going to be this slow climb. I think we are kind of in that disbelief stage right now. And once it breaks, I think it's going to break very hard. Now, what do I know? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. And that leads me to the last point of a bear market. obviously, I would love to see no bear market ever again. I would love for this to be the super cycle playing out in real time. But what we're doing here and kind of our thesis and our, outlook and perception of what we're doing, we're planning as if there is going to be a bear market. So again, for everyone out there, as we've seen in the past, do not get over leveraged right now thinking that super cycle, no bear market in 2026. I still think there is a big possibility of another, 50, 60% drawdown. So we're working on the basic premise that we will see a bear market again, and everything we're doing is built around that idea. If we are, proven wrong, then I would be pleasantly surprised. But I'm still, even though I'm a super cycle maxi, I still think 2026 is going to be a bear market.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's no reason to think otherwise. And again, we've seen this pattern play out many, many, many times before. And then people feel euphoric. When people feel euphoric, they get over leveraged, and then the whole thing comes crashing down, and it humbles the F out of you. And then you have a 2-year kind of people finding their souls again, and then the kind of cycle repeats itself. I don't see why this cycle is any different. But as he is the most intelligent, best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, correctly pointed out, Michael Saylor is he's pumping his bags, right? He's advocating for his bags, which makes sense, right? It's incentives. So, but at the same time, I'm bullish. I personally, I'm Bitcoin. I'm a spot Bitcoin type of guy, but I am bullish on MicroStrategy. I think what Saylor's done for the space in terms of advocacy, in terms of bringing it into the traditional financial markets, I think it's done. I think it's been amazing, right? But as Dave pointed out, it is more. You are taking on more risk, and it isn't the equivalent of buying spot Bitcoin and taking it into self custody, because that is more of a guarantee, and guarantee is a very strong word. And just to use Saylor's own words, I'm going to borrow some of his own words, right? Like, this thing isn't going. This thing isn't getting banned, right? This thing, we've gone over the biggest hurdles, in my opinion, in Bitcoin. Like, the China mining ban was pretty effing crazy, and Bitcoin survived decentralizing the hash rate and it passed with flying colors, right? The hash rate recovered within 9 months, right? We're one of the most powerful countries on the face of the planet. Essentially, banned Bitcoin mining, the hash rate dropped 50%. You can make an argument that it cut the 2021 market short, and Bitcoin survived. The fork wars, that was pretty crazy. Some of the strongest Bitcoin companies like Bitmain, Jihan Wu, Roger Ver, all kind of teamed up. They had stacks and stacks of Bitcoin and tried to change the rules, and that didn't work out. Look at where Bitcoin Cash, look at where BSV is today, right? And then, of course, the regulatory attack, Operation Choke Point 2.0, which we were experiencing in the U.S. the last 4 years or so. And, of course, the U.S. government was putting pressure on all governments around the world. We passed that with flying colors as well. We literally got a pro-Bitcoin president in the White House, right? They messed with us, and we literally threw our political hat in the ring, and there's a change in administration. Of course, democratically, peacefully, and legally. So, yeah, I mean, like, Bitcoin's winning. Like, that's undeniable. And I think it's a question for you guys. Are you going to stay humble, stack sats, stay solvent, buy spot Bitcoin, put it in self-custody? Or, as Dave pointed out, are you going to play roulette? In a way. I'm not saying it's the equivalent of roulette. But yeah, I do want to give a shout out to the live stream. We have 2,000 people watching live, 500 people watching live on YouTube, 1,300 watching live on X, and around, we peaked at 300 on Rumble, but we're at 130 right now. So shout out to the live stream. If you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button. We have a jam-packed show for you guys. We have so much to cover. We got Cathie Wood, I think, during the numbers. Also extremely bullish. And then we're going to be breaking down, speaking of Michael Saylor, Michael Saylor announced the STRD investment for long-term investment, long-term investors. And that essentially is going to go after the bond market. And that's a big deal because the bond market is effing huge. Now, why am I bringing this up after everything that I just said? Because I think that eventually what this is showing is it's waking up people to the reality that Bitcoin is better money, right? It kind of gets the foot in the door. So is it direct exposure to Bitcoin? No, but it's waking up the public consciousness. What Michael Saylor did yesterday, and we talked about it on yesterday's show, where he joined the Jordan Peterson podcast. Jordan Peterson has 8.7 million subscribers on YouTube. He's a mainstream content creator. And he was just basically saying, look, my company was fried. And then I adopted a Bitcoin standard. I had to ask the question, what is money? I was trying everything and anything, and I couldn't figure it out. And the reason I couldn't figure it out is because essentially inflation was bleeding my company dry. We're gonna reach a critical point where, you know, a percentage, let's say 20 to 30% of the population, come to that realization that the money that they're using is fundamentally broken. And by switching, it fixes everything else, right? And we kind of saw this a little bit with social media, right? Over the last 10 years, we saw the disintermediation of media, right? Legacy media tried tooth and nail to try to censor, stop. Governments were doing this as well. And then what happened? It reached a point where, you know, 40 to 50% of the population stopped consuming their news from legacy media and started consuming their news from podcasts and X, right? And all of a sudden, people started to wake up, right? I think the same pattern is going to repeat itself, but with Bitcoin. Before we move on, I do want to get Dave's thoughts before we wrap up this section. We move on to the next section. Dave, what are your thoughts, man? What do you see the next 5 years in Bitcoin? You know, $1 million, more adoption. Where are we going, my friend?
It could go anywhere. You know, I think this treasury company sort of bubble that we're in right now could have an effect going either direction, right? And you had mentioned the paper Bitcoin, which you know is something that if I was going to invest in a treasury company, I would want to understand really thoroughly what it is that they do with their Bitcoin, right? Like, are they rehypothecating that Bitcoin? Are they lending it out? Are they doing something to try to get yield with that Bitcoin? Are they borrowing against that Bitcoin? Is there anything else encumbering the Bitcoin in the company that would mean that, you know, that someone else has a claim to it before the shareholders of the company? So it could go in that sense that you know, something could, usually a black swan, something that we're not expecting could happen, and we can end up in a situation where you know, the confidence in the market that has been driving these premiums dries up. But then the flip side of that, of the paper Bitcoin, is that we could end up in a situation where there just aren't enough Bitcoin, right? We saw sailors saying they don't need proof of reserves. And to me, that's what you say if you don't have all the coins, or the coins don't add up on the balance sheet, right? And so I think there is a chance, and we've seen this mentioned a lot of times, where we've got all these treasury companies coming in, and they're just, you know, it's not affecting the price as much as we think it should be. And so the question is, do all these companies actually own the Bitcoins that they say they do? And if not, then what happens when they're called to account for that? Are they suddenly going to have to buy up Bitcoins that you know, they're essentially in a short position on right now? And so the market could move really quickly in either direction. Obviously, in the long term, I'm a bear. I have no idea what's going to happen in the short term, but yeah, I mean, all of those numbers, there's not really a number in dollars.
Dave, I heard you say in the long term you're a bear. Did you mean in the long term you're a bull?
Or, sorry, yeah, in the long term I'm a bull. Exactly. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, it could, like, 100 million Bitcoin, $100 million per Bitcoin is likely to be a number that we see someday. Whether or not that's because the market decides that Bitcoin is more valuable than it thinks it is now, or just because dollars become much less valuable as they have been going. You know, we're going to get there at some point. So for me, like, I've been through enough of these cycles. I'm not really emotional about the price anymore. And like, personally, I'd rather the price go down, because I don't feel like I have anywhere near enough Bitcoin, and I'd like to buy more before we get to those
Absolutely,
crazy
man.
numbers.
That's only something a true Bitcoiner would say, right? Bitcoiners are okay with price going down because it means you're able to stack more, and we're okay with the price going up, right? But it's kind of bittersweet in both directions. Now, I do want to address some of these comments, right? We have Mr. B saying, no evidence of wrongdoing. Sorry, I don't side with you. You're getting mad with no evidence. It's a bad look. Look, guys, it's as simple as this, right? Um, Bitcoin, we have a philosophy of don't trust, verify. Personally, I like Michael Saylor. I think what he's contributed to the space has been amazing, right? I've had, met with the guy, went to the 100K party at his house in Miami Beach. And I like the guy. And I think he's contributed tremendously to the space. However, in the Bitcoin community, we have a saying, and it's a very important saying. It's don't trust, verify, right? And here's the thing. Tether has made their reserves public. Literally, Paolo posted on X, copy paste, boom. Here's an address. Here's our 98,000 coins. The country of El Salvador has made their reserves public. You can literally see how much Bitcoin El Salvador has, right? And you could see them accumulating, right? So if there's anyone that wants to take a little bit off the top, or if they, try to rehypothecate, take a loan, you're going to see that on chain. And what does that do? It holds accountability. There's accountability there, right? When you don't have access to that, it's a trust me, bro type of situation. I'm not questioning Saylor's integrity. I'm not saying that he's doing that. But what I'm saying is we have the technology where we don't have to live in a trust me, bro type of situation. And we should take advantage of that, right? Because history has shown that the trust me, bro, I'm not saying that this is going to happen to any of these companies, but history has shown that the trust me, bro type model is not as efficient as the don't trust me, bro, verify model, right? That's all we're saying. So anyways, it's going to be a great show. I do want to give a shout out to the live stream. We just broke 2,000 live viewers on YouTube and X. And of course, the Rumble live stream's coming in hot with 150 live viewers. If you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button. I'm here with, of course, my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields, and of course, our special guest for today, the strongest, best looking, and most intelligent entrepreneur in Canada, Dave Bradley. We have tons to talk about. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin rodeo during the culture segment. We got a clip of Cathie Wood going in hot, dropping some bullish signal. And of course, during the news segment, we're going to be talking about the bond market. We're going to be talking about another thing that Michael Saylor is introducing. And the reason this is such a big deal is because the bond market is massive. It's absolutely huge. And here's the thing. What happens when institutional investors, so you guys have to understand how bonds are looked at, right? Bonds are looked at as the most safe investment you could make, practically, especially from trusted countries, right? What happens if all of a sudden Bitcoin proves to be the safer bet, the safer play? What happens? Where do you think the price is going to go? What do you think happens there, right? So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be unpacking it, and I think it's going to be a great conversation. Opti, this reminds me. Can you pull up the Croesus Jesse Myers graphic that kind of breaks down everything? Because I want to compare that with the bond market stuff. Anyways, guys, before we jump into today's show, I do want to give a shout out, of course, to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor, the best place by far to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. I'm talking about BitcoinWell.com. Why is it the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack? Because it's a non-custodial platform, meaning when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. All you have to do to get started is go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to get signed up. If you use the promo code SIMPLY or go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well. And every single toss, you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. We're going to do a live demonstration of what that is right now. Every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn something called Bitcoin Well points. You can redeem those points towards a stamp seed, towards an orange Cybertruck, towards a BitAxe, towards a Simply Bitcoin hoodie. Or you could toss a coin into the Bitcoin wishing well. Every single time you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million sats. It's over $1,000 these days. Again, if you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, you get 3 tosses for free. So we're going to toss a coin into the wishing well, get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 531 sats. If you're a higher net worth individual looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, and you want a white glove tailored service, check out bitcoinwell.com/OTC. This is by far the best place to build your Bitcoin stack. They did it the right way. It's a non-custodial platform. Check out bitcoinwell.com/simply today. All right, everybody, we'll be right back. We're going to hit the numbers. Tons to talk about. A bullish clip of Cathie Wood. Let's check it out. Here we go. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today. All right, everybody, we are back. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to take you directly to the stampseed.com website where you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. Don't write down your seed phrase on paper. Stamp it into titanium. So go to stampseed.com today, use promo code SIMPLY, 15% off. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 109,580. Block height, 900,811. Sats per dollar, 913. Market cap, 2.18 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 9.25%. Percentage issued, 94.65%. Decline from all-time high, negative 2.1%, and realized monetary inflation, 0.85%. Before we check out the Cathie Woods clip, I do want to give a shout out to all you guys in just our channel, and it's been a really big deal. 2 huge milestones and Simply Bitcoin's history. First of all, we hit 1,000 subscribers. 90,000 subscribers on the channel. 10K away from 100,000 subscribers. This has been a dream of mine. You understand? I've always wanted to be a YouTuber. I cannot believe, we're on the verge of hitting 100,000. And also, we got our first 100,000 video recorded by, of course, my little sister, Megan. And it's on the verge of hitting 100,000 views. This was beautifully recorded. Shout out to Zemo Media and, of course, Megan. If you ever see Megan, use that. Don't say Megan, say Megan. It will really annoy her. And she's my little sister, and you have to do it that way. Anyways, and we're going to be dropping the Dr. Jack Cruz episode, which was beautifully filmed as well. Really looking forward to it. Anyways, let's check out the Cathie Wood clip. Extremely bullish. And remember, guys, the
$100 billion that I mentioned, institutions have to either take up those newly minted Bitcoin, and that's going to happen over years and years, or they'll have to pay up to get holders to sell it. So again, scarcity value will drive, or will increase because of the supply demand imbalance, with institutional investors really having very little involvement yet. And so we think this is just the beginning.
So absolutely, this is just the beginning. I completely agree, and I'm going to pass this question to Dave Bradley. First, I'm going to start off with this. Dave, you're an OG, my friend. You've been here. I don't know what class, but I know it was before 2015, right? Could you ever have imagined Bitcoin getting to where it is today?
Yeah, that's crazy. I was class of 2010, and I was selling Bitcoin that I had mined in my basement to people on localbitcoins.com. And there was a point where the Bitcoin community in Calgary here was literally just me. And I had a pretty surreal moment walking into Bitcoin 2021 in Miami there, seeing like, tens of thousands of people in this giant convention center, just being like, the contrast between one person sitting at Tim Hortons and the tens of thousands of enthusiastic people in that room is mind blowing. And yeah, no, like the numbers like that, 100,000, a million, 100 million would have all seemed completely insane to me back then. And even the numbers like, I think to me the time that we hit like 3,000 was one of the most shocking areas for me for some reason. It's all relative, right? And it's like it's an emotional response when you haven't seen it a million times. And, it's still crazy that we're getting to these numbers for sure. So no, back then, Bitcoin to me, like most people, was a way that I was looking at as a way to make more dollars. I wasn't looking at it as like this world-changing asset that's going to rework the structure of literally the entire world. I was like, I can buy these and sell them later for more dollars. And, I think that's a journey lots of us go down.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I think that's the crossover moment where you stop denominating your net worth in dollars and you start denominating your net worth in Bitcoin. Your life will fundamentally change on how you look at the world, and you will question certain expenses. You will question the way that you see things because you really want to accumulate more Bitcoin. You don't want to accumulate more dollars, right? That's the game, right? And that's I would say, one of the toughest mind shifts in people's minds. Changing that as quickly as possible as a Bitcoiner is going to make your life a whole lot easier, because in the back of your mind, with all the noise that's going on, the game is very simple. And I'm sure Dave agrees with me. Make sure that you have more Bitcoin than the day before, and that's it. And you win. You're winning. That's really what it comes down to, right? So anyhow, I do want to continue this conversation, Dave, because this is fascinating. 2010. Holy cow, man. I mean, guys, just to give you a perspective, me and Opti, 2016, 2017, it was the Wild West. Like, forget about wallets, forget about good software. Like, no. You understand? Like, this thing didn't exist. Like, it was like the first prototypes of these devices. You're 2010. You're talking about there is no hardware wallets. You're talking about paper wallets. You're talking about software. You were probably using the Bitcoin software itself to use a CPU to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah, I got into Bitcoin. I never CPU mined, but I got into Bitcoin just as GPU mining was becoming a thing. And yeah, back then there was no hardware wallets. There were no mobile wallets even. It was pretty much, you run Bitcoin Core. There was another piece of software you could run on top of that called Armory that a lot of us used. But that was like even before there were SPV wallets, right? So you were pretty much using everything directly on chain with no deterministically generated wallets. You had everybody reusing their addresses. It was a very, very different time in terms of the tech stack, for sure.
I can imagine. And Dave, I want to ask you, because we've all had these moments. I've had this moment. Opti's had this moment, right? What was your Pixis story?
Yeah. So I've spent an ungodly number of Bitcoin on things that I didn't, I wish I didn't spend them on. I don't want to get too much into the specifics, but I'd have a lot more money right now for sure. I saw somebody be like, I wonder what floor Dave's on. And, I'd be on a much taller building on a much higher floor if I'd never spent any Bitcoin. But, the very rational decisions when you're way up, we all take some profits. And I think that a lot of Bitcoiners have those stories. And like you said, it kind of affects you for the long term. It makes you start to question your spending, makes you start to think of everything in opportunity cost measured versus Bitcoin, right? And so there's a lot of people that assume that there's just an unlimited amount of money flowing around in Bitcoin, but the fact is that most of us Bitcoiners who've been in it for a while are just absolutely cheap because we think, do I really need to buy this? Because if I don't buy it now, it's going to be cheaper in a year, and that really changes a lot of the way that you look at the world, right? And I think in the long term, like you had mentioned before, somebody said that it's going to basically dry up all capital and nobody's going to invest in anything. I don't think that's true, but I think it's going to really shift the way that people make purchasing decisions and make investments. And I think in the long term, hopefully there'll be very broad, sweeping, positive changes to society because of the fact that a lot more people are starting to take a long-term view of the world and make choices that don't just follow this like really, really disposable consumerism path that the West has been in for quite some time now, and start to value, if you're going to make a purchase, if you're going to part with your hard-earned Bitcoin, which is a representation of your time, you better be buying a product that's worth it, that's going to last, and that will perform as well as the Bitcoin in terms of the usefulness of that product, right? And so I think that's going to change pretty significantly. And then back to that Cathie Wood clip, the thing that I thought that's interesting from that, these treasury companies are great. Essentially what you're gambling on though is how irrational is the market going to be in the future compared to now. And so they're not really accomplishing anything novel, I don't think, but I think there is an area where Bitcoin is going to start accomplishing novel things in the traditional finance system. We're starting to see little bits of that because really Bitcoin is the best form of capital that we've ever had, right? And so it makes it the best form of collateral that we've ever had. And instead of drying up capital markets, what I think we're going to start seeing, and we're already starting to see a little bit of this now in the Bitcoin world, is that people will start securing things with Bitcoin. So as we look at the bond market, for example, bonds are secured by nothing. They're secured by the faith and confidence that you have, and as you put it into a trusted country. And to me, the idea of a trusted government is absurd, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, to trust these people to say, that, as you put it, trust me, bro. And interesting example, I'm on the board of a company from Kelowna, a Canadian company that's doing Bitcoin for payroll and benefits called Block Rewards. And they're about to do a private placement, raising some capital. And they're doing convertible debt like most startups do at that sort of stage. It's very common. It's not dissimilar to a bond, except that it can be converted into shares of the company at the option of the lender. But in this case, they're actually securing part of this convertible debt with Bitcoin. And so that, I think, is where we're going to start seeing these things move, is like Bitcoin creeping into the capital markets and becoming used as a reserve asset, as collateral. And really that's where it should be at this point.
Yeah, and I completely agree, by the way. It's the best collateral the world has ever seen. It's pristine collateral. And you said something really interesting, which is, again, people underestimate how much broken money has affected society as a whole. And I'm talking about the quality of products. I'm talking about health, anything, right? Because it incentivizes this kind of short-term behavior. You could I chat GBT'd this the other day, right? Because I've just seen commercial airline travel, right, over the last 10, 20 years degrade to the point where it's unbearable at this point, right? It wasn't like that 20 years ago, right? But again, it's fiat incentives. Fiat breaks governments. Fiat makes products cheaper and makes short-term thinking, a thing. So I think Bitcoin, that phrase, fix the money, fix the world, is 100% true, right? Anyways, before we move on to the next segment, I've seen 3 comments saying Megan, and on Rumble about 1 or 2. So if you guys are enjoying today's show, in the chat, drop Megan. And if you ever see Megan at a Bitcoin conference, remember, Her name isn't Megan. Her name is Megan. Anyways, guys, if you guys are enjoying the show, smash that like button. 2,500 of you guys watching live and on Rumble. Of course, 140. Smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the content. We're going to talk about the Bitcoin bonds, that massive opportunity, how Bitcoin is going to, just go into the bond market, take a lot of that share away, because Bitcoin is just better. And of course, during the culture segment, we're going to talk to Dave Bradley, Bitcoin OG from 2010. We're going to talk to him about the Bitcoin Rodeo. We're going to talk to him about Alberta. Guys, stay tuned. It's going to be a hell of a show. Smash the like button, and we'll be right back in just a second. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes self-custody easy and secure. As a Bitcoiner, I care about holding my own private keys, but multi-sig can sometimes get tricky. Casa nails it with a multi-key security. So even if one key gets lost or stolen, your Bitcoin stays safe. And you don't give up custody, meaning no one could access your Bitcoin but you. No seed phrase anxiety, no single point of failure. I've been telling my friends and family about Casa for years. Their UX and UI on their app is by far the best in the industry. Inheritance planning is built in, and they even offer Casa for Business if you're thinking about a Bitcoin treasury. Hit up casa.io today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium. Head over to casa.io. I want to give a shout out to our partner, CoinKite. If you take your Bitcoin security seriously, you'll need the best Bitcoin hardware wallet on the market to take self-custody. That's where Cold Card comes in. The Cold Card Q is the most advanced Bitcoin signing device ever made. It's got a full keyboard, larger screen, and NFC support, making air-gap signing easier than ever. It's built for power users who want the ultimate security without sacrificing usability. And if you're looking for a battle-tested, uncompromising cold storage, the Cold Card MK4 is your go-to with PSBT signing, an industrial-grade secure element, and USB-C. It's the perfect blend of security and convenience. Both devices are, of course, 100% Bitcoin only, open source, and built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Secure your Bitcoin the right way with the Cold Card Q and the MK4. Head over to coldcard.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off anything on the store. All right, everybody, before we jump into the news segment for today, guys, you have to imagine that your Bitcoin is worth 10 times more than it is today, right? And when you start thinking that way from a defensive kind of adversarial kind of game theory perspective, you start thinking about how you custodying your Bitcoin, right? You got to custody your Bitcoin the right way, which is why we recommend Cold Card here at Simply Bitcoin. It is the best Bitcoin hardware wallet in the industry. The latest device, the Cold Card Q, has 2 secure elements, and it's completely open source, the code that is running on the device itself. Go over to coldcard.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off anything on the store. Get yourself a Cold Card Q, a Cold Card MK4, a block clock. They got many devices. So scan the QR code and secure your Bitcoin the right way in self-custody. Get yourself a Cold Card today. All right, everybody, let's go down the bond rabbit hole story. And we got a comment with Megan in the chat and a goat. And it's absolutely hilarious. My sister just said, "Did you memeify me?" And I just said, yes, absolutely. So it's incredibly important, guys. If you see Megan in person, you say Megan, okay? Anyways, let's get to today's
The big
story.
brother dad jokes are not good.
Bro, everyone's loving it in the chat. I don't know what you're talking about. Smash the like button too. How many likes are we at? We're at 188 likes. Help us break 250 likes by the time the show wraps up. Smash that like button. Over 500 live viewers on YouTube, 135 live viewers on Rumble, and on X, almost 2,000 people watching live. Smash that like button. Anyways, I do want to jump into this I love this. I saw this Reddit post and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Sailor's convertible bond strategy explained to the finance noobs in the simplest possible terms. Absolutely love it. Very fitting. Before we start talking about bonds, could you send me that chart? Could you put it in the chat and I'll pull it up on my side? But yes, so let's read this. Sailor, hey, lend me $100. Lender, okay, what's my interest rate? Sailor, I won't be paying you any interest. Lender, then why should I lend you money? Sailor, because I'll pay you back even more than you earned with market interest rates. I'll pay you back in MSTR shares once they clear the strike price set in the convertible note. The shares are very likely to be worth much more than $100 in a few years. There are no guarantees, but odds are you'll make $200, $500, or even $1,000 on the original $100 loan. Where else can you get returns like that from bonds? Lender, nowhere. Have you done this before? How has it worked? Yes. My converts have crushed all other bonds, stocks, and Bitcoin itself over the last 4 years. Lender, sign me up. So the TLDR is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, right? And what do you say? Okay. So, and now I'm going to pull this up. Very great kind of infographic created by Jesse Myers. He went by the name of Crisis before. Crisis, I don't know how to say it. But anyways, to set the stage, there are 1,000 trillion of assets value in the world. 1,000 trillion is like one
quintillion, quadrillion. That's the one, quadrillion.
Right? What the F is going on, right?
Big numbers hard.
Big numbers hard. 1 quadrillion. It sounds weird, man. Do you think we'll see like a quadrillionaire? That'd be crazy. Anyways, I know we're definitely going to see a trillionaire soon. So I do want to address this. I do want to cover it. So we got Jesse Myers, and this is again, Bitcoin is only 0.2% of the global wealth. It is a superior asset to gold. That's undebatable, right? It's just, it has better physical characteristics. You could send it anywhere around the world, and it's easier to custody. It's easier to send. There's absolute scarcity. Gold doesn't have absolute scarcity, okay? Gold's inflation rate is roughly 2%, and it remains steady because if the price of gold goes higher, the production or the mining of gold goes higher with it, right? So that inflation rate of gold is pretty steady at 2%, and it's been like that for forever. So if you had a bar of gold, it would buy you the exact same amount of goods than it did 100 years ago, right? So it's scarce, but it's not absolutely scarce. A big difference. What I mean by that. So if the price of Bitcoin goes up, unlike gold, the production of Bitcoin can't go up with it. In fact, it gets cut in half every 4 years. Just had a halving, I think it was last year, right, Opti? So anyways, back to this. So we're going to talk about bonds, kind of opportunity there, and we're talking about gold. So just if Bitcoin reaches the price of gold, that's a 10x from here. The current market cap of gold is 22 trillion. So 10x, 109,000. What is that? It's like $1.09 million, right? Now, take a look at the bond market. It makes the gold market look tiny, puny, right? The bond market is 318 trillion. And as this Reddit post explained, right? Here we go. Here's Sailor's reasoning, right? There are no guarantees, but odds are you'll make $200, $500, or even $1,000 on the original $100 loan. The lender is like, where do you get this information from? And Sailor is, yes, my converts have crushed all other bonds, stocks, and Bitcoin itself over the last 4 years. Now, from a Bitcoin perspective, because fundamentally I'm a Bitcoiner at heart, is this going to move our cause forward? What is our cause? What's the cause? The cause is the sovereignty of people, right? People reclaiming back their financial sovereignty by buying Bitcoin, earning Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, and putting that Bitcoin into self-custody. That's how things actually change. Is this going to actually do that? No, but it is going to move the Overton window. It is going to raise awareness. It is going to raise the consciousness of people to the reality that, hey, wait a second, these bonds are like what David so wisely put, which is why he's the most intelligent Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada. What are they backed by? Right? The full faith and credit. That's a trust me, bro. That's a government saying, trust me, bro. All Bitcoiners are saying, dude, don't trust me. There's 21 million. Anyone could audit this, in the comfort of their own home if they're running a node, right? Bada bing, bada boom. So Saylor just announced strategy to raise nearly $1 billion with STRD preferred stock offering to accumulate BTC. And this is specifically for the bond market. This just went public today. Here's Max Kaiser, another Bitcoin OG. The global bond market won't survive MSTR. Mike's about to become the Iron Bank of the new Game of Thrones the world finds itself in. Call him Iron Mike. It goes on to say, and if you guys don't understand Game of Thrones, if you haven't seen it, what is the Iron Bank? The Iron Bank of Bravos is a powerful financial institution in Game of Thrones. It's the most predominant bank in the known world, known for its vast wealth, influence, and ruthless efficiency. The bank funds rulers, governments, and merchants across Westeros, Essos, and offering loans with strict repayment terms. So just to kind of set the tone here, right? And I'm going to leave this up, one last time. The gold addressable kind of market is 22 trillion. We know Bitcoin's superior to gold, but look at the bonds. I think we're going a lot more than 10x, baby. That's what I think. That's my personal opinion. And one last time, guys, if you guys are enjoying the show, drop in the comments, Megan. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Dave. Dave, what are your thoughts, man? Huge. I also apologize, Dave, for my bad dad jokes and my little sister's. I'm trying to get in her head and it's working because I can see she's frustrated and it's hilarious. But Dave, what are your thoughts here, man? Bond market, Bitcoin.
Yeah, I have to say, I have a little sister, so I identify with this. I would have gone with Shut Up Meg from...
Wait, I have to... All right, Megan. You know what Dave said? The most intelligent, strongest Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada. Instead of saying Megan, he said, shut up, Meg, which is hilarious. Megan is nodding her head in frustration. Smash the like button if you guys are enjoying today's show. We're on the verge of breaking 3,000 live viewers, 612 live viewers on YouTube alone. Anyways, Dave, sorry to interrupt you. You know what I mean? You got a little sister, so you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's the duty of a big brother to do this kind of thing. So, but yeah, I think ultimately, like, you can look at the bond market as the addressable market for Bitcoin, but I think ultimately the size and scope of the bond market is something that's going to change, and we're in the process of that changing, right? And so a lot of traditional financial people have always looked at like U.S. Treasury bills as this sort of like zero risk investment, right? And so you've got this concept of like the risk adjusted return where people judge their returns as a comparison to the US Treasury bills. And that assumption that they are a zero risk investment, I think is proving not to be true, right? We're seeing a lot of turmoil in the global financial system. We've heard talk of the United States not honoring certain bonds to certain holders, for example, or not fully honoring them. So the fact is that you can't really view sovereign debt as a zero risk investment. And I think what we're seeing is this switch where the market is realizing that dollars are free for the system to create. And that's this whole thing is just part of pricing that in versus Bitcoin. And, Bitcoin will always be a zero risk investment if measured in Bitcoin, right? And we're seeing the switch of the denominator for the global financial system moving from dollars to Bitcoin. And ultimately, I think, like I said before, what we're going to end up seeing is that a lot of debt in the world, whether it's corporate debt or sovereign debt, is going to end up backed, at least in some portion, by Bitcoin, because it's just going to be more competitive in the global market right now if it's backed by the best asset in the world.
Beautifully put, man. And I love the way that you said that, the way that you phrase that. And I think that was some words of wisdom by a Bitcoin OG, right? Which is you got to price it in Bitcoin. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the only thing they cannot manipulate. They cannot change. They cannot move the goalpost. So when you price something in Bitcoin, it actually shows the truth, right? Yeah, man, it's such a rabbit hole. Anyways, Opti, quick take before we move on to the culture segment.
Yeah, well, I think what Dave said is the real signal right here. And I think this is what we're all kind of watching in real time, is that people do not want government debt. As Dave said, sovereign debt is no longer being viewed, at least obviously from us Bitcoiners at first, as the risk off, the least risky thing to be holding. From our perspective, it's probably the most risky thing to be holding, hence why we are all in on Bitcoin. But that signal is starting to spread around, and you're starting to see not only just the interest in Michael Saylor's different preferred stock offerings, that this is catching on, whether that's the Bitcoin treasury strategy or people dropping treasuries. We're seeing central banks essentially, stock up on gold. We're seeing talks around the world about central banks, acquiring Bitcoin as well. They're trying to loosen these regulations and essentially be allowed to start to partake in Bitcoin. So it is becoming very clear, at least from our perspective and our vantage point, that people do not want sovereign debt. They don't want government debt. It's becoming a risky thing. I think Saylor's even said in the past, or maybe it was Jeff Booth. I forget who said it. But these are basically toxic assets that no one really wants to hold now. They're being forced to hold it. And now there's a new game being played. And of course, that is acquiring Bitcoin. So things are changing in real time. We've been covering this. We even had, Jay Powell last week say, ever since the end of the Bretton Woods, we had to adjust to this new monetary regime. We're seeing that play out in real time. It's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, these big institutions move slow like the Titanic, but it is happening, and we are seeing more signal of this happening. So is it going to be one big catastrophic moment? I don't think so, but I think slowly but surely we're going to see people move away from government debt and start to stack Bitcoin. And once those really big institutions like the Croesus chart you were showing fully dive in, super cycle confirmed.
Absolutely, 100%. Guys, we're going to talk to Dave Bradley, Bitcoin OG, an amazing entrepreneur, the best entrepreneur in Canada, Bitcoin entrepreneur. We're going to talk to him during the culture segment exclusively. We're going to give him the podium, and stay tuned because he's going to drop some wisdom. Anyways, we're going to hit the culture segment. We'll be right back in just a second. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledin has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledin is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to hodl while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledn.io today. All right, everybody. We got the myth, the man, the legend himself, Dave Bradley with the hoagie, the strongest, best looking, most intelligent Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, Bitcoin OG. This man was mining Bitcoin with the GPU back in 2010. All right. He's a legend. Anyways, David, welcome to the show, man. You have an amazing conference coming up in Calgary called the Bitcoin Rodeo. You talk a little bit about that, and then we'll explore further subjects.
Yeah, I have to thank you first of all. My official title is actually the strongest and best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, and so you threw in most intelligent. So I've never made that claim, but I welcome the input. So yeah, like you mentioned, we've got the Bitcoin Rodeo coming up in a couple weeks here, June 28th and 29th, here in Calgary, Alberta. We've got an amazing conference, amazing speaker list that we've got on the website there, and it's a very non-technical conference. We're not going to be debating the merits of op return or whatever else. We're going to be talking about how Bitcoin fits into the real world, and we've got a strong focus on topics that lean towards personal sovereignty and also Alberta sovereignty. So I'm here in Alberta, the underrepresented province of Canada, where we're largely taken advantage of by the rest of the country, and we've got, since our most recent election, a pretty strong push for independence, and we have a path to that. We've got laws on the books that allow us now to force a vote on sovereignty, and I think the sovereignty movement is one that really mirrors the goals of Bitcoin, right? It's just about people wanting to become more free than they are today, and so I think that the sovereignty movement and the people behind that really align pretty directly with Bitcoin. And that's something we've been going after for a while, really. Since COVID, basically, we saw, the silver lining to COVID was that it woke a lot of people up, and it woke a lot of people up to the problem that Bitcoin solves, really, which is this ever expanding parasitic overreach of the government, and they're printing and spending. And, I think a lot of people have had enough of that, and we want to share with them the fact that we believe Bitcoin is the solution to this. And so, like I say, we're going to be talking a lot about how Bitcoin might fit into a sovereign Alberta. And you see the speaker list on there. There's some stuff I'm really excited about. So we're hoping to see a lot of you guys out there. I see somebody in the chat saying they're from Calgary. So come on out to the Bitcoin Rodeo. You can get the tickets at bitcoinrodeo.com. And we've got some other events happening around the rodeo that are pretty awesome as well. So we've got the night before the conference itself, we've got the SAT market that our good friend Ben BTC Sessions puts on. We've got I think there's probably like 40 or 50 vendors coming out that sell everything from beef to tarot cards. It's basically like a big farmers market, flea market, where everyone takes Bitcoin, and there's a really cool community forming around that. And so we've got a way that we can basically buy all those things now without the government's help and permission. And so that I think is really important. We also have something we're going to be posting in the next day or so. We've got an Alberta Independence Cocktail Hour hosted by Bull Bitcoin. And so that should be a good one. That's going to be on the 26th. And then the last one that I have to plug is the 30th of June, the day after the conference. The guys at Bitcoin Mentor, also headed by BTC Sessions, are putting on a little seminar, Bitcoin Bootcamp, where you can learn really all the technicals. It's a full day course, I believe, that you can hang out in Banff at an amazing hotel owned by a Bitcoiner, and they'll teach you all you need to know about physically setting up all of the tech that you need to be sovereign, essentially. So yeah, we got a whole week of awesome stuff going on, and
that's awesome, man.
It's going to be exciting.
As you said, amazing speaker list. I just want to read it for the audio listeners. Of course, we got Francis Pulio. I will be there. Eric Kason's going to be there. Sean Newman, of course. BTC Sessions, aka Ben Perrin, Dave Bradley, Madex Nolan, Adam O'Brien, Steve Barber, Ben Harper. Dude, I can't pronounce that last name. Derek Hildebrandt. There we go.
Hildebrandt.
Julian Figueroa from Get Based. We got Seb Bunny, John Tellis. We got Brett Oland. We got Luke DeWolf. We got Knut Svanholm. Heather Keys, Justin Dory. We got Katie. Awesome. From Plan B Passport, got acquired by Citizen X. She's going to be making an appearance. We got Mike Cook. I think Ben's business partner on Bitcoin Mentor. Reverend Hoddle. Roger Huang. And Tim Moon. Guys, this is going to be amazing. You definitely don't want to miss it. Get your tickets today to the Bitcoin Rodeo in Calgary. It's going to be awesome. I'll be there this year. It's going to be a Bitcoin celebration like no other. Get your tickets today, bitcoinrodeo.com. Anyways, I do want to pivot the conversation. We got Dave Bradley in the house. And Dave, recent election in Canada, right? There's two parties in Canada, very similar to the United States, two mainstream parties, right? You got the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, and other politics aside. This is YouTube, and we're a family-friendly show. We're inclusive in our messaging. The Liberal Party that's been in power essentially was in power for like I think 11 years, and it looked like they were going to lose the election. I think until Trump kind of said some things. They won re-election, and I believe the current prime minister is an ex-central banker. And the reason that we're bringing this up is not because of fiat politics or ideologies, but because the Conservative Party was more pro-Bitcoin. So that leads me to I know in Alberta, you guys are pro-Bitcoin. You guys are, all about that movement. And you guys, I know that you've been working on it. I know Adam's been talking about this. I know Ben's been talking about this, that there is this movement, a legal movement, a democratic movement in Alberta that's happening for Alberta to essentially become a sovereign province, right? So, Dave, with the knowledge of us being on YouTube, could you talk a little bit about all that?
Yeah. So here in Alberta, we're generally known as sort of like the Texas of Canada. We've got all the oil wealth. We've got a lot of rural population, ranchers. We have a Western mentality here, and we're very culturally different than the East of Canada, where a lot of the power base sits. And we have this structure called transfer payments in Canada, where essentially the federal government collects all the taxes, all the income taxes from everyone, and then redistributes some of that money to the provinces, and it doesn't go back proportionally based on where those taxes were paid. And so the end result is that a huge amount of wealth that's generated in Alberta gets redistributed by the central government, which I believe does not represent us in Ottawa. We actually, in the last two elections, the election was over before our polls had even closed here in Western Canada, because most of the votes are out there in the East. And unsurprisingly, the East votes for a party that will continue to redistribute the wealth from the West, where we have the oil wealth, to the East. And meanwhile, at the same time, this sort of climate insane group of central bankers, like you mentioned, has been really stifling our oil industry with insane environmental regulations and basically blocking our ability to get our oil to market, because we can't build pipelines in either direction, really. And so we're in a situation that is really accurately described as taxation without representation, right? And the American Revolution was started based on a 3% tax on tea, and we are being looted to a much greater extent than 3% at this point. And so understandably, Albertans have had enough of this. We're basically just getting a very bad deal. And the long-term solution is Bitcoin. We just need to wait until Bitcoin permanently removes the government's ability to essentially tax us by the printing more money and diluting our money supply. But in the short term, we have this path where we can essentially remove one of our many levels of government. We're probably depending on how you look at it, we're under 4 or 5 levels of government at this point, and we have an opportunity to potentially go down to 2, which would leave us, I believe, in a much freer place to live. And so some of the interesting stuff that we're seeing around that, right after the election, I started getting calls. I've been talking about this independence angle for quite some time, since I've been talking pretty seriously about it since the 2019 election, where the Liberals were reelected. And the answer that I used to get from old established people, especially who have a lot of skin in the game in the current fiat system and the current federal system with Canada, they used to give me the answer that Alberta independence, yeah, that'd be nice, but it'll never happen. And that Overton window has shifted so drastically that the normies have had enough at this point. The people who have vested skin in the game have gotten to the point where they feel like the looting is too great and the deal is not good enough. And certainly if Alberta were not already a part of Canada and we were presented with the deal that we currently have, hey, wouldn't you like to send a significant portion of all the wealth created in your province to these other provinces who produce less wealth? Then we would never go for that deal. And so I think we're getting to a point where it is enough of like a normie idea, and it is something that I think is growing really rapidly. And the end result is not just going to be independence, because I think we're very likely to achieve that. My prediction would be that Alberta will be an independent nation by the end of 2026. But the result of that is that we're going to see a reverse brain drain. I'm already seeing, once I started tweeting about it right after the election, I'm seeing
let me add
a ton of
caveat to that,
Bitcoiners.
right? In a legal democratic fashion, right? This will be achieved through the legal means, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we're not talking about overthrowing the state here. We're talking about a vote that we have a law on the books in Alberta here now. Our Premier Danielle Smith put on the books a couple days after the election, and the result is that we now need only 177,000 signatures to force a vote, and that vote will accurately, it'll show the will of the people of Alberta and give a mandate to the provincial government to negotiate us out of the country. And I think that's the path that we're on. And like I was saying, that reverse brain drain is very real. We've got some of the most impactful and useful Bitcoin companies in Canada that are already starting to move their corporate offices to Alberta, partly because our taxes are lower here, but also because they see that this is a real possibility now. This is a real path. And I think we have the ability to potentially create one of the freest jurisdictions in the Western world. The fewest levels of government, the least amount of wealth distribution, and the least amount of meddling in our lives from the government, which I think is something that most Bitcoiners can get behind, right? We value personal freedoms, we value personal integrity and personal choice, and I hope are really well positioned to create a nation that aligns with all of those things. And so my hope would be that 2, 3, 4 years from now, the world sees Alberta as a haven for Bitcoiners, as a place where if you are a high value person who can essentially live anywhere, but you want to live in a jurisdiction that aligns with your values, I think this is the place that makes sense for a lot of people. A lot of my friends, like I have friends that have moved to Costa Rica, El Salvador, Panama, etc., and they're enjoying the fact that the government intervenes in their lives a lot less in those places. And I think we can get to that point. And for me, I've avoided moving to those places partly because I love the comforts of Western society. I like living in a city. I like having great restaurants and great culture around me and things that I can do. And I think it's possible to have both of those things. And I think we could be one of the very first jurisdictions in the Western developed world to get to that point.
Man, and I'm bullish that you guys are there. There's a legal avenue for you guys to do that. And the governor's on board, people are on board, and you see kind of these types of movements worldwide. Like, for example, in Spain, Catalonia, for example, has been wanting to have independence from the rest of Spain, because there's a difference in culture, and they feel kind of very similar. They make that economic argument as well. So this isn't something that's unique to Alberta. This is something that happens worldwide. And what I'm going to put a prediction in here. What I think connects a lot of countries together is fiat, right? I think that the less fiat becomes, the less powerful fiat becomes. I think I think you'll start to see more and more calls for local government independence. That's my prediction. Tone Vase has been making this prediction for a while. He's called it the balkanization of the United States. Now, I know the United States is a little bit different than a lot of different countries, because the sovereignty of the states is still somewhat intact, even though it keeps getting chipped away. So states have completely just different types of laws, and it kind of allows people to move and pick and choose. Not all countries are like that. But I think as Bitcoin continues to grow in adoption, states are going to start to say, hey, wait a second, like, I am contributing the vast majority of the GDP. Like, why am I, throwing some of that to this central government? And again, this is all game theory, and this is all going to happen in a peaceful, legal, democratic way. But Bitcoin's going to change the world. It's going to change how society and governments organize themselves. I really recommend reading the book, The Sovereign Individual. I think that thesis is going to play out. And, here you are, you have very influential people in Alberta that are basically saying, hey guys, we're not getting a good bargain here. Right. And as individuals, as citizens, you have every right to ask that, if you live in a free country, right? That's what it's all about. So anyways, I do want to thank our very special guest today, Dave Bradley, for joining us. Again, Bitcoin OG, best looking, I forgot the lines. I have to look at it. Best looking, strongest, most intelligent Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, Dave Bradley. Go get your tickets to Bitcoin Rodeo. Go to bitcoinrodeo.com. I will be there. It's going to be awesome. It's one of my favorite conferences of the year. Go check it out. And Dave, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. If you guys enjoyed today's show, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. I'm your host, Nico. This is my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. And our special guest for today, Dave Bradley. And one more time, everybody, in the chat, Megan. All right, everybody. I'll see you guys later. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.